I've seen a lot of bankers, and I've seen a lot of cops. I've seen girls pull out all the stops. I've seen a lot of children with their parents in their hands. Felt a lot of women refuse to understand. Well, I don't think I understand why we're making such a fuss. And I don't think I understand what's come of all of us. And I don't think I understand why we take the world for granted. I just want to get right back to Guitar Players Planet. You see it in the papers, you read it every day. The riots and the fires going on in South LA. The muggers and the government, they're all wanting the same thing. They take you for your money, whatever spring. Well, I don't think I understand why we're making such a fuss. And I don't think I understand what's come of all of us. And I don't think I understand why we take this world for granted. I just want to get right back to Guitar Players Planet. Take me. And I don't think I understand what's come of all of us. And I don't think I understand why we take this world for granted. I just want to get right back to Guitar Players Planet. 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 Guitar Players Planet.
Down by the water, maybe out the sun, maybe out the door when the music man calls. That's when I gotta play. For the things I never had,
Sunny skies, the smell of palm tree air. Looking back, I could never feel fair. The way the music has touched my soul, the way that the South holds its control. But I've got a new way to choose. I'm gonna start running back to the lands of the new. Oh, na 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 na. Seems to me that I have lost my old friend. Got the sunset off the highway again. Then I get lost on a long summer day. I must go back before it's too late. You're afraid, you're feeling alone. Time and space can never afford. The holidays can ring in your fear. The ghostly embrace can only mean tears. And I've got a new way to choose. I'm gonna start running back for lands of blue. Oh, na 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 na. Sitting at the lake, I'm feeling confused, but I had my guitar, so I played this blues. But I'm afraid, the war might be true, that I might never come back again. Seems to me that I have lost my old friend. Got the sunset off the highway again. Then I get lost on a long summer day. I must be back before it's too late. Before it's too late.
Someone to take me down at night. Someone to make my day. New revelation fills my soul. Oh, I can waste away. You distracting my attention. You're all that's on my mind. You not looking for perfection, but you're too hard to find. Now the first night is coming, and I know what to do. You know that nothing feels sweeter than someone else. Yeah, 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 you. Oh, you. Yeah, you. All right. Hey, yeah, yeah. Where did my color go? Got your head in the sand. You can't be in control using a powerful hand. I wanna be you, I wanna see you. Don't taste the kisses of hate. Don't try to tell me, don't try to sell me, don't try to say it's too late. You're gonna push me to the edge, back me in a corner, making me stand in your shoes. Push me to the edge, hide a little color, it's black and white and blue. Black and white and blue, yeah. All right. Yeah. Cat learns to ring a bell. Rat gets free from the maze. We can be taught to love. We've got to learn to wait. I wanna see you, I wanna be you. Don't taste the kisses of hate. Don't try to tell me, don't try to sell me, don't try to say it's too late. Yeah, you're gonna push me to the edge, back me in a corner, making me stand in your shadows. Push me to the edge, add a little color, it's black and white and blue. Black and white and blue, yeah, 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 I wanna be, I wanna see, don't taste the kisses of hate. Don't try to tell me, don't try to sell me, don't try to say it's too late, late. Push me to the edge, back me in a corner, making me stand in your shoes. Push me to the edge, add a little color, it's black and white and blue. Yeah, black and white and blue. You're going black and white on the edge, back me in a corner, making me stand in your shoes. Push me to the edge, add a little color, it's black and white and blue. Black and white and blue.
Sunny skies, the smell of palm tree air. Looking back, I could never feel fair. The way the music has touched my soul, the way that the South holds its control. But I've got a new way to choose. I'm gonna start running back to the lands of the new. Oh, na 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 na. Seems to me that I have lost my friend. Got the sunset on the highway again. Then I get lost on a long summer day. I must go back before it's too late. If you're afraid, if you're feeling alone, Simon said.
Hello, everybody, and I think we're good to go with the green screens and everything. We made it tonight, and tonight is the Thanksgiving trifecta. That's what I've been calling it, the Thanksgiving trifecta. We got across the top row, we got Charles Bracken, Dr. Sasse, and Dr. Whitby. Everybody here tonight to talk all about all things astrophotography and what they have going on and what's going to go on in each of their projects in the future. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into the brass tacks of everything and all the stuff that's going on, we should definitely talk about the sponsors with all the giveaways tonight. We're giving away a free year subscription to IP for AP. So that's one of the things that we're giving away. So we're going to give that away. So let's talk real quick about our sponsors. So thank you to Woodland Hills, and I spoke to Farah, so everybody knows. We're going to be giving away two $250 gift certificates to Woodland Hills in the next couple of weeks. So it's going to be a lot of fun giving that away. If you already signed up for it, you're good. If you haven't signed up for it, go to astroworldweb.com and sign up for all the giveaways. Red Giant level. Thank you to Prima Luce for the Eagle giveaway, Camera Concepts for the gift certificates. Optolong, we have not only this Friday coming up, we're giving away an SHO 3nm 2-inch set. Not only are we giving away that, but for Astropalooza, we're giving away another set from Optolong. They've been so gracious and gave us 2 sets to give away. So thank you to them. Masters of Pix Insight and IP for AP have been super generous with the gifts of all the workshops and the giveaways and all that kind of stuff. So again, tonight is IP for AP. We're going to be giving away a free 1-year subscription to IP for AP. Of course, thank you to all our member sponsors. We just got another Quasar member. I haven't put it up yet. So thank you to Dr. Hassan Askari, who is our most recent Quasar member. So thank you to Dr. Hassan. Black hole members, we've seen these before, so thank you for everybody though. We can't the member sponsors just keep on growing. It's now 4 slides of people, so thank you for everybody. And if you haven't become a member sponsor and want to see some of the stuff that's going on, go join our Patreon at AstroWorld TV on Patreon. So Protostar members, last week we had Michael Ritchie. We raised not only the eyepieces that we've given to them, we gave them almost $2,000 retail of eyepieces to replace, but we raised another $500 for the Lima Astronomical Society, the observatory that got burglarized back in the summer. And so we'll be sending a check to them next week from the members of AstroWorld. A lot of fun doing that last week. Tonight, like we said, Dr. Sasse, Charles Bracken, Dr. Whitby, everybody's on tonight to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun. December 7th, the day that will live in infamy, Jeff Dickerman is going to be coming on from Optech Inc. And he's going to be talking to us about the Gemini focuser rotators, his FTX line. It's going to be real interesting to have him on. December 10th, don't forget to buy your t-shirt either, because all the proceeds go to a local, an AstroWorld members registered astronomy club. All the proceeds go to it. So don't forget to buy your t-shirt on astroweb.com. December 14th, we got Craig Stocks from Utah Desert Remote. He'll be on December 14th. January 4th, we actually, and I got to say thanks to Pete, Don Goldman from Astrodon is going to be on. And that should be a lot of fun. I've been using Astrodon filters for years. I can't wait to see what he's got coming up in the future. It's going to be a lot of fun talking to him. And as usual, don't forget to join us on all our other social media platforms: Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. So feel free to come visit us all there. And that being said, wow, I love this new Stream Deck. Everything works right. It's great. It's unbelievable.
You know what, Dan, real quick, don't forget, everybody who is new to the show, welcome. We really appreciate it. We have a great show lined up. And for all of our YouTubers and Facebookers, please don't forget to like the show and share the show. Share the show to public if you're on Facebook. And let all of our other fellow astro imagers know in the community what we're doing here. We have a great lineup. I am really excited to have the Thanksgiving trifecta here. It's going to be a great show. So yeah, so let's get this party started, man.
And if you like what we're doing, hit that thumbs up button. Hit the thumbs up and let us know that you like what we're doing. For those of you that want to hit the thumbs down, you could just leave. Just hit the thumbs up. But I guess why don't we go across the top? I know Christian and Charles, you have been on the show previously. Dr. Whitby has not.
Max,
he's
call me Max, please.
I've been. It goes against my grain to do that. It really does. But if you insist, I'll call you Max. But Max, why don't we go across right to left from Max, Christian, and Charles? Since Max, you're the newcomer, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're at and what you do, and give us a little shout.
Thanks very much. Yes, well, I'm speaking to you from 2 o'clock in the morning on a little island in the North Sea, just off the coast of the United Kingdom, on the border between England and Scotland. And I've had an observatory here for getting on for 5 years now. I went on an absolutely fantastic masterclass in astronomy, run the very first one ever, I believe, Christian, wasn't it? Run by Christian Sasse there with his eagle in Siding Springs. Yeah, Siding Springs in Australia. My background is actually making television programs. And I made quite a few programs about science. I made some shows in the Nova science series that you may be familiar with on PBS. And about 5 years ago, I wanted to get seriously into astrophotography. And Christian announced on iTelescope his inaugural masterclass. And so I went there all the way to Australia for a week and had the most fantastic time. At the Siding Springs Observatory, right in beautiful, dark, rural Australia, and my eyes were open to the wonders of the heavens. And then I had the great fortune to meet up with Charlie Bracken there on the top left, and we met at NEAF, didn't we? The last NEAF before the long horrible years of COVID, and we got together and came up with a completely insane project to photograph the entire night sky. And maybe Charlie will tell you a little bit about that when he speaks. But it is 2:30 in the morning here, so or 2 o'clock, and I brought with me a special piece of apparatus which I thought you might like to see, which I might find useful. So here we are. Lovely pillow.
Broken out.
There you go. You brought out the pillow.
I was gonna go grab one. I was gonna go grab one and out of her back if he didn't do it.
Yeah. I thought it would be the Linus blanket.
That is awesome. Well, welcome, Max. Welcome so much to AstroWorld. And as you can tell, we like to keep it light here. You know, I'm wearing I'll switch into the AstroWorld stuff. Everyone knows I wear AstroWorld stuff, but you know, Pete, sorry, you lost. And that's all I'll say. But anyway, Christian, welcome to the show again.
Thank you very much, and it's really a pleasure to be here. So I'm based in Vancouver, British Columbia. So Canadian, like all Canadians, we sit on the 49th parallel and just look over to the States. So we wave to all of you. And we don't at all have good weather here as far as astronomy is concerned. Yeah, a little bit about my background first. So I'm originally an electrical engineer, did that for many years. And in 2016, I decided to go and leave it all and start something different. And so I started eagle photography. That's one of the things that you see there. Although this is not a photo, okay, I just have to leave that for you. And then, of course, yeah, astrophotography, which was an absolute delight. And I was, just to continue with Max, I was actually doing a very daring step of, I didn't know how I got the daring things to start teaching it, because I thought if you don't understand something, teach it. So that's what I did, and I was very fortunate to have Max in 2018, and we had a fantastic time. And since then I got hooked, and then Charlie and Max came up with this brilliant book, which I really have to praise. It's an absolute masterpiece. Anybody who hasn't seen The Visible Universe, I can't emphasize, go get it. It's it's really beyond belief, the project, right? Anybody who understands, thinks APODs are brilliant, well, have a look at this. You'll see what the stage after that is. Okay, so anyway, that's a quick introduction. And Charlie, I know through Max, really, so I'm really delighted to have gotten to know them, and I was honored to write the foreword for the book, and then I'll hand it over to Charlie. Thank you.
Yeah, so likewise, I'm happy to be here. It's also very cool to be doing this with Christian and Max. We've come at this at different times from slightly different angles, but we've put together a talk tonight to talk about remote imaging. That's something I've been mostly a backyard imager, and so in fact all the time that I wrote the Deep Sky Imaging Primer and all most of the other books, that they were all when I was just dealing with a telescope in the backyard. And the Visible Universe project that Max and I undertook required a lot of remote imaging, which introduced me to iTelescope and some other remote setups that Max had, and just really very different. So some of the stuff we want to talk about tonight is how is remote imaging different? What can it bring? Just some different different aspects of that. But I will say, listen, I am so dedicated that literally I have 2 windows open on my computer right now. I am simultaneously running Nina on a computer in Chile through a consortium that Max started for some remote imaging there. And I have another instance of remote desktop open running the computer in my backyard, because it's clear here in Pennsylvania for once, although we've had pretty good weather recently. So so I'm talking, but my telescopes are working right now.
I got one running in the backyard too. So
nice.
Well, Charlie, I it was impressive, but I think Christian might have more. How many windows do you have?
A lot. Yeah.
I'm working my way up to Christian's level slowly. You start with 2, and then you go from there.
All right. So why don't we? I know it's really late for Max, and Max, I know that you don't care because you're an astronomer and stuff like that. But we want to be a little bit a little courteous to you.
Yeah.
So let's just go ahead, Christian.
Is it also some kind of festive occasion in America?
Yeah,
Tomorrow,
yeah,
yes.
tomorrow.
Well, let me
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Yes, since it's now officially the 24th here in the UK, let me wish you and all the audience a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much.
You're the
And to
first
your
to get through it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump in here. Let me share. Let me just verify that you guys can see the slideshow there.
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so let's start out. I mean, if this doesn't convince you to get into remote imaging, this masterpiece right here, right? This is Corona Australis. Or the constellation Corona Australis is a huge molecular cloud. I think this spans 7 degrees, just absolutely huge. And this is, an example of the kind of thing that you just can't see here in the northern hemisphere. Obviously we have great molecular clouds here, but remote telescopes can open up a whole other half of the sky, basically. So I'm going to scatter this presentation with several images, full slide images like this, and all of these were taken remotely. This is from the visible universe. So we've done our introductions, right? So we don't have to go through this slide, but I will just call out that Pennsylvania, Vancouver, Northumberland, UK, not exactly the most, let's say, astronomically friendly skies in those areas, right? Dealing with a lot of clouds. At least Christian and I have a lot of light pollution. Max is on the North Sea, so when it's clear there, at least it's dark, but not clear very often. So we've broken the talk into 3 sections. I think each of us have basically like 10 slides. So this is fairly light. So just interrupt with any questions as we go. I will say I can't, when I'm presenting, I can't see what's going on. So just go ahead and interrupt me with any questions or anything that comes in through the chat. Feel free.
No problem, Charles.
So I'm going to talk about just some basic considerations for remote imaging, why you should consider it, and what some of the things you might have to think about are. Christian is going to talk about how it differs from backyard imaging, which is what most people probably are used to. And then Max is going to go into some really interesting details about setting up a scope, what it takes to do that yourself, to really physically put a scope in another place. Here, another image. This is the Eta Carina Nebula. This is I like to think of this one as the M42 of the Southern Hemisphere, right? This super big, bright nebula that everybody images, and totally worth everybody imaging, and kind of worth imaging every year. Never get tired of this one. So Max mentioned the visible universe. So this was the book that Max and I put together. This was kind of our pandemic project. Although obviously we didn't know the pandemic was coming when we started it, but I'm glad that we got everything set up and could sort of be running remotely, taking these pictures and processing them during the pandemic. This took about 2.5, 3 years to put together, but I'll say it wouldn't be possible without remote imaging. There's no way we could have done it. And looking back through the data, it's about 70% of the images in the book were done remotely. A lot of those are done with iTelescope. A lot of them were done with setups that Max had put together in Chile and in Spain and even I think in France. So and then Max's backyard and my backyard filled in the remaining 30%. So really just wouldn't have been possible to do this book without it.
Charlie, let me just very quickly suggest that you quickly explain the second feature of the book, which I think might be of interest to this audience, because partly the book is like a kind of catalogue of the best things to take photographs of, but we had a second aspect to it, which is quite unique.
Yes, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Max. And yeah, so I did speak on this channel, and you can go back and hear all the details of that. I think 6 or 8 weeks ago I was on here talking about the all sky image that we put together. And that's, you know, to Max's point, literally impossible to take a picture of the whole celestial sphere without having telescopes and cameras in different hemispheres. So the centerpiece of the book and the framing for everything is an image of the entire night sky, northern and southern hemisphere, across all seasons, stitched together with 153 panels that Max and I took and spent many months laboriously integrating and weaving into a seamless mosaic image. So on this channel, you can go back on YouTube. I did a talk on how we did that about 2 months ago. So let's talk about just some basic considerations for remote imaging. And I'll start off with 4 reasons to consider it, 4 reasons to do this, because it is, you know, it can be somewhat challenging. Here's an example of an image. This is from EI Spain. This is a telescope that I already have, right? I have the FXQ106, absolutely love it. But the skies in Spain were just so wonderfully dark that we were able to, you know, put together this is just a 6-panel mosaic. And it, you know, that's one of the things you'll hear me talk about, is just having a telescope set up far away from civilization can completely change the way you image. I typically image this object in narrowband. It was easily imageable in RGB in dark skies of Spain. So that's the first reason. And this is from lightpollutionmap.info. If you guys aren't familiar with that site, I highly recommend it. Excellent maps of light pollution in the United States. Most of them use the VIIRS data, which is a nighttime light satellite analysis. The layer to sort of really use, though, is if you use this site to scroll down to the World Atlas layer. That does a better job of showing how the light disperses, not just where the light is, but how having a light dome from a city near you causes light pollution in your sky. So this is the better layer to use, and that's what I'm showing here. This is the eastern seaboard of the United States. So, you know, Washington, Philadelphia, New York. This is about 12% of the U.S. population right here. But you can see all the way over to, you know, Detroit and Chicago, Pittsburgh. Sorry, not Chicago, Cleveland. There's no place to run, though. I mean, I'm in this yellow green area here. Really definitely more yellow. It's, you know, yellow on this map is something like Orbital 5. That's not great. I mean, you can get some stuff done, but there are going to be objects that are almost out of reach, particularly dark nebula, molecular clouds, things like that. Really, really difficult to image. Dan, I know one of your favorite places, you know, Cherry Springs, right in the middle of this hole in central Pennsylvania, one of the few dark places you can go. Down here, this is the border of West Virginia and Virginia. This is Seneca Rocks. There's a star party down there. You can pretty much map the star parties by the
by the blue.
And I'll just say there's kind of nowhere to hide. This is the fuller view of the United States, and yeah, if you look at where there isn't any light pollution, obviously there are no people out here, but there's a reason. You know, you're in the middle of the high Rockies for a lot of these places. You really, these are not accessible places. I will say it is dark, however, in Chile. There are places here in rural Arizona, New Mexico, rural Australia. Those are places where it really is truly dark, and that's where you'll see a lot of remote telescopes.
Charlie, can I just ask, to my eye, I can kind of see a division between the east and the west there. Is that an artifact of the data gathering here?
Yeah, so no, I was thinking about this. This is like something like probably the 95th or 100th meridian. And what you're seeing here is the history of the United States unfolding with both land grants that were given in the 19th century, as well as statehood. And so, yes, you see, I mean, obviously we were sort of settled primarily in the US from east to west. And you can see you know, obviously Mississippi was a big border, but then as the United States expanded west, you can see where sort of the land grants were given to settlers. And then I think there's probably some also factors of just whether the land starts to get less fertile as you approach the Rockies, or it's harder to farm there. But yeah, I should look into this more, but there's definitely some historical pattern going on. I'm sure somebody on the YouTube chat probably knows, but there's clearly something historical about this 100th meridian. So the reason number 2, I said I have 4 reasons here to consider remote imaging, is how many clear nights do you get per year? So I pulled this from a blog, and this guy Brent Schneider had put together a 10-year analysis of, or no, sorry, 30-year analysis of clear days. And actually, I'm not sure, this might even be like just total average % cloud cover. It says that where I am here should be about 125 clear nights a year. That's overstating it. Now this is from 1966 to 96, so things may have gotten worse as the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere has increased due to climate change, but this seems overstated to me. I think I probably get something more like 80 clear nights a year, but it definitely points to relocating to the Arizona border here with California. It looks like a really fine place to go with 275 or so clear nights a year. I'll also point out, like I said before, the same places that are really dark, Chile, Arizona, Australia, these places are also really clear. So Max, do you know Deep Sky Chile? You had said the other day, how many clear nights a year do you get there?
Well, I actually looked back at the number of nights that we imaged in 2021 in Deep Sky Chile, and it was 278.
Oh my gosh.
But there would have been a few nights on top of that that I didn't, for technical reasons or whatever. So Christian, I expect, has got experience of imaging in Chile in 2 locations.
We stay 25 out of 30 clear nights and totally clear there. That's the statistics we're seeing.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Christian, you said
Per
25 out of every 30 days?
30 per month, right? And those are totally clear. Of course, they vary from month to month, but on average, that's what we're seeing. Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's stupendous.
That's just insane to think about that. Just basically 5 days are clouds. Every month.
Yeah.
The rest go for it.
It's amazing.
Yeah, in New York, it's the complete opposite. 5 clear to every 25 cloudy.
Yeah.
If I can just say, it's actually really exhausting because oh no, yet another blue sky day. Oh, no, I have to...
the horror of another clear night. The horror.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's
for the ground crew, it is actually exhausting. It's not a joke. It's serious. Really, it is. They love cloudy nights.
Oh, it's horrible. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times where those lovely apps that we use for weather, Astrosphere, Clear Outside, Cloudy Nights, not Cloudy Nights, Clear Dark Sky. All these lovely things come out. In New York, I swear they should say these things work everywhere except for Long Island, because I'll go outside and I'll set up my telescope. It's beautiful. It's like 80 degrees out. It's nice. It's clear. Put it out. It's clear for about 2 hours, and all of a sudden, blanketed with clouds.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't put the telescope out, then it would have
clear.
Definitely stayed clear all night.
Wouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah. So reason number 3, and I mentioned this before, is there's a whole universe out there in the other hemisphere, right? So if you're in the northern hemisphere, there's a whole southern hemisphere sky to look at. If you're in the southern hemisphere, vice versa. And these are just some highlights, of course, from the southern hemisphere that I put in here. All of these, of course, remotely imaged. I think actually all of these we took with iTelescope. But there's, just so much left to see. And I know that a lot of our viewers are still sort of working their way through the Northern Hemisphere objects, but there does come a point at which you're like, wow, okay, I've kind of gotten most of the marquee objects, and now I'm looking for something more interesting. Well, to scratch that itch, have a look at the other hemisphere worth of objects, and you'll, it's like starting fresh again in astrophotography. And then finally, the fourth reason is access to equipment that you don't have. And this is speaking more to, services like iTelescope. And these are two of iTelescope's scopes, but I don't have a CDK in my backyard, right? But every once in a while, if you want to image a small galaxy, especially under, let's say, pristine skies of Chile, this is a great way to do it. I don't plan on putting a CDK here. It wouldn't be worth it in Pennsylvania for the 3 to 5 clear nights a month that I get. On the right is a Takahashi Epsilon. That's a scope that I've considered getting, and it is great to sort of be able to try it out and see what it's like to shoot at f3, using a super fast newt. So these are all options to either try before you buy or just try out your dream scope for a little while.
And actually, Charlie, I've thought of a fifth reason for remote imaging. In all seriousness, it's fantastic to be able to image in Australia on iTelescope in what, for me, is the daytime. So I don't have to be up at 3 in the morning.
That's right.
Actually, the time shifting is quite neat. And well, for Chile, how does it work for you? It's slightly better, isn't it? I think
right now it's 2 hours difference. Yeah.
Right, but in the right direction, so it gets dark for you.
Yeah.
Slightly sooner than it otherwise would. So that's
Exactly.
nice. And for me in Chile, it's pretty horrible kicking off a session because I have to be up at small hours of the morning, like I am now. But when I wake up in the morning, and I'm someone who likes waking up at, say, 6, I then have about 3 or 4 hours of imaging time in Chile. And if I need to do, most remote imaging that we do is hands off. We set up a session and let it run. But in Chile, I can be hands on for a couple of hours, pre-dawn, and in all seriousness, that's a nice thing.
That's a great point. Yeah. It's there's your fifth reason. Absolutely, especially and remember the seasons are backwards too. So when it's summer here and you're not getting very long nights, you also get the seasonality of getting very long nights it's winter in the southern hemisphere. You're getting the long nights then. So Max, I know that literally for a month in the summer in the UK, you have no dark skies. It never reaches astronomical twilight, right?
Not a month, Charlie. From early May through to late August, it is not dark enough in Northumberland to do deep RGB imaging. Yeah, and so my observatory has a really unique feature. As far as I'm aware, and I was surprised when I Googled this, as far as I'm aware, it's the only observatory greenhouse in the world. So I grow my tomatoes. I have climbing varieties that go up around the pier. It's just perfect.
Don't let them dig too deep into the pier. Yeah.
The only snag is
Max, let me just add reason 5.5, which is equally important, but it's to Max's point, and that's education. Think of all the children and so where you can't teach astronomy, you have to teach during the day. And to Max's point, there you are. You can go into another hemisphere and you can teach at nighttime in real time. It's quite fantastic, actually.
Yeah. Didn't think about that one. Yeah. So speaking of time and seasons, so just as you do this, we were just talking about time zones there. It is something you have to consider, the time shift, and also when you're going to log in, daylight savings times is implemented in different ways around the globe, and so this is in French. You can ignore the French on there, but you can see the chart. so this was part of the consortium that Max has. There's someone in France who is sharing this time on the scope in Chile, and this is the offset throughout the year between time in Chile and time in Central Europe. And you can see it goes from 4 hours to 5 hours very briefly, and then to 6, and that's because daylight saving is implemented at different times. Then it goes to 5, then it goes to 4, right? And so it's just, as far as considerations, this can be a good thing, to Max's point, and that allows you to be imaging at a convenient time for you. But check daylight saving time to make sure that you're logging in at the right time. For instance, this year Chile actually even apparently delayed daylight savings time start because they had a constitutional referendum to allow people to vote. So they shifted it randomly, by a week this year.
By the way, Charlie, just to your point of daylight saving times, that's the absolute nightmare for our telescope. When we change our time, Australia, for example, has strict 6 months, 6 months. They're exactly on 6 months. Here it varies. Then it varies when they change the time. It can be at 2 a.m. It can be at midnight. And it makes it very complex when people do their bookings, right? And when you do the change and how the calculation of all the of the celestial objects goes at that time. It gets quite bad, really.
I can imagine. Yeah, it's it's I know it's a pain for any kind of financial systems around the world. Anything that has to be synchronized globally, daylight saving is a bit of a mess. When I do the custom astrophotography planner for people, I don't do daylight saving. And people ask why. It's for this reason. I literally can't predict, even in the United States, it's uncertain at this point, what the status of daylight saving is in the US, when it exactly will be implemented next year. I think, I think the House passed the bill, but the Senate never passed it. But if they did, we could end up with no daylight saving in the United States. So it introduces this uncertainty, which just makes things very difficult.
Yeah, there was another bill that was trying to pass that was trying to make daylight savings time permanent, and one was taking it away, another one was making it law, and it was a big mess.
Yep. So this is
in California. What they did is they actually agreed that they said, "Hey, it's up to the state." The state says, "Okay, well, we can do it," but they're not going to pass it this year. So there's talk now next year they're going to go ahead and just abolish it.
And Arizona doesn't have it at all.
Why don't we introduce local sidereal time? That will confuse everyone. That's it.
There you go. Up for that.
Yeah. Says the astronomers, right?
Exactly.
So another consideration to think about, just the data. It can be a lot of data, especially with today's larger sensors. And if you're taking short exposures, you could have gigabytes of data. Now, for my scope in the backyard, I walk out there, I put an SD card, I download 10 gigabytes, I walk it up to my office, transfer it that way. You do have to make arrangements for this for remote scopes. So, just bear that in mind. You're probably going to need some sort of commercial storage service, and it's probably going to need to be fairly fast. The internet at the site doesn't need to be super fast. I mean, it needs to be a reasonable connection so that you can either remote desktop or AnyDesk or whatever you're using to log into your computer. That's going to need to be moderately fast, but it's the data transfer that can take hours if you're not careful. And then we were joking about this earlier, but you are going to have to process all this data, right? So if you are at a place that has 300 clear nights a year, it can almost become a burden. And I say that in the best possible way, that you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with all this? I need to get another hard drive. I got to store all this. I got to process it. This is something, this is what our consortium recently aligned on. And this doesn't necessarily just apply to remote imaging, but it's particularly important for remote imaging to standardize your calibration files, simply because it might not be as easy to take new flats or to take new darks. In our case, if you have a flip flat, you can do that fairly easily, but it's not always that simple. So we aligned on basically 3 groups of exposures. So, 60 seconds at gain 0 for luminance, RGB, all at 3 minutes, gain 0, and then all narrowband at 5 minutes, gain 100. So this is on a Zeta VO camera. That allowed us to standardize by only taking those, allowed us to just create some basic master darks, master dark flats, and master flats. Use those for 6 months or so and not have to deal with this again just by standardizing that. So another thing to think about, it might not be as easy to like redo your calibration images.
And no rotator, of course.
No, that's right. That's a great point. No, yeah. Rotators take up a ton of your back focus, right? So if you can have one, it's great. But if then you're going to be retaking your flats all the time. To Max's point. And then my last slide here before I move on over to Christian's section. Just it's worth planning. So this is a planner that I created for our imaging. Just thinking about when the moon is present, just optimizing, right? So it's fairly expensive to do remote imaging, whether you do it yourself, whether you rent the time. So you want to optimize it. We were joking you're going to have a lot of data, but also you want to, on moonless nights, right? You want to be taking your galaxies, your reflection nebulae, your broadband targets. For the moon polluted nights, so even Chile has light pollution from the moon, of course. That's when you're going to be shooting your narrowband target. So emission nebula, supernova remnants, and star clusters, right? So star clusters not sensitive at all. You're not dealing with a faint object. You're dealing with just stars there. So star clusters are also a great target for the moon nights. But this was just a planner we had put together, allowing us to optimize what we do.
Charlie, just something to mention, which actually came as a bit of a surprise to me when I started out in astrophotography, and that is that the phase of the moon is completely independent of where you are on Earth. Like when it's full moon with you, it's full moon for everybody on the planet.
Yeah.
That's worth mentioning.
Yeah, and another thing, Max. Yes, that's absolutely true, right? So the phase of the moon is the same for everybody at the same time on Earth. The moon illumination. This is something I picked up for the latest edition of the Deep Sky Imaging Primer. It's not linear or even close to linear. So when the moon is 50% lit, right? So first quarter, third quarter moon, it's actually not, that's about when it's going to start interfering with your RGB imaging. Then it gets a little brighter than that. But the difference between it and a full moon is not twice as bright. A full moon is something like 8 times as bright as a half-lit moon. So there is this sort of very peaked curve for the moon's illumination. So full moon's really, really bright compared to even just 1 or 2 days on either side of the full moon. It drops off, 20-30% pretty quickly. So something else to keep in mind, I generally do RGB imaging, between the quarters. So when the moon is 50% illuminated or less. And then as it starts to get above that, then you start to work within the night to try to, get it when after the moon sets or when it's, on the other side of the sky. Okay, here's another pretty picture. This is the Small Magellanic Cloud. This was from the visible universe. We took this with iTelescope, telescope number 9. Just fantastic. You got 2 huge globulars there. And then I just love looking at the Magellanic Clouds because you're looking at nebulae that are within another galaxy. Now, granted, it's a dwarf galaxy that's, orbiting ours, but you're looking at other nebulae within another galaxy, which I just always think is very cool. So anyway, with that, let me hand it over to Christian. Christian, just let me know when you want to go forward in the slides, and I'll drive for you.
Yeah, do please. Thank you very much. Okay, very good. So I wanted to say also, I was fortunate. I mean, Charlie kept on mentioning the southern hemisphere. So I was lucky because I grew up all over the world and partly also in South Africa. And my final year of school, I did in Namibia and Windhoek. At that time, it was called Southwest Africa. And I remember, at that time, I wasn't as interested as I am now in astronomy, but I did spend a lot of time just looking at the night sky, being out in the even sand dunes at night where it was completely dark. And I remember just looking up and just looking at the Milky Way. And then someone told me this joke. He said, you know how it is, the astronomers, they're in the northern hemisphere, but God put the beautiful sky in the southern hemisphere. And there's some truth. And maybe if you look at Charlie's map, they're probably more in the southwest and northwest of the United States. After I looked at the light pollution map, but anyway, there's
we can't see it here anyway, Christian.
You are not. Okay. Yeah, but I did notice one thing. Already as a child, I was looking a lot at the sky, and I noticed, because the sky is so incredibly deep blue, this deep blue that you often don't see anymore. And when you watch planes, and at that time there weren't many planes, it really was a difference. I would notice, the condensed stripe. And what intrigued me is that you would see this trail from a plane of the condenser, and soon you would see a very fine white line across the sky, which then would expand quite rapidly. And later I learned that it is because these very fine water molecules and so on, that the water vapor that is emitted are acting as nuclei for cloud structures. And the point I'm trying to make is that our climate is actually really suffering under the immense amount of plains that we have, and also that is part of the climate change. And if you go to Namibia now, you will notice that the clouds that they have there, as compared to what we had, a few decades ago when I was there at school, is already quite different, right? So that is another factor that is of concern for astronomers. So yeah, that brings me to this first slide, and the reason for showing this is from Daniel. I forgot his last name now. Gosh, I had it on here, but I don't know where it disappeared. I had the but anyway, he was in my masterclass, or in our masterclass, I would say, and he last time showed this beautiful setup, and that's a very nice portable setup. You can see a harmonic drive Rainbow Astro there.
Daniel Brown.
Daniel
Brown.
Thank you. That's the name I was looking for. Thanks, Max. That's Daniel Brown. Yes, Daniel Brown. And he had this beautiful setup. It weighs about 30 pounds, everything together, 14 kilos. And you can see that's a very nice mobile setup, but you can see already how complex things are, even though it is run with a ZWO Air. And it takes quite a lot of skill to make it look so neat and to make it run like that. So that's usually how we start. That's the first part where we go on Wi-Fi. So then, Charlie, the next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, and this just gives a breakdown of his, if you're interested to see how I built this up, this is very typical, really beautifully done. So there's a total weight, 14.7 kilograms, and there he is, the credit, Daniel Brown. And you can see everything is really geared to ZWO because that allowed him to use the ZWO Air. Next slide, please. And then you come to my own setup in Bortle 7 skies. Okay, that's my backyard. So I've got a ZWO Air on there. That's an Epsilon 180 that you see there. And I've also got a mini computer. So the next stage then that you do is you want to get rid of some limited software. So you put a mini computer, which you can order on Alibaba or so. And the setups get more complex. You can see the Gemini rotator on there. It's got a rotator and many other fancy things. But the more you put on, the more can break down. Then next slide, please. And then you come to, Steve Wilkins, another masterclass. It's very nice to see, see Max, how he's going to talk about his observatory and how he built up things. But it's very nice to see that we were lucky we had such nice and interested, curious people in the masterclasses in the past. And a lot of them have started to build their own observatories. And this is what Steve Wilkins built near Melbourne. So he built his own observatory. There you can see the astrophysics mount and so on. He's taken some beautiful images. But again, the level of complexity rises all the time. The more you automate, the more complex it gets. Next slide, please. And then you come to iTelescope, and that gets really complex because that is like a symphony almost without without any direction. Everybody's just playing their own tunes, and that's basically how it runs, because you can rent your telescope at night and you point it anywhere, and that's a big difference to what Charlie was talking about, because the average imaging time that we see is about 20 minutes. That's the average. That means every 20 minutes, the telescope is pointing at a completely different direction, and the mount and the whole telescope and the gear is under incredible stress. And that's really a big difference, and that limits the way you select your components very much. You'll see, for example, that we use a lot of plane wave there, and we use paramounts, ascension mounts, L mounts, but we're very limited in that respect. And people always say, why don't you buy the newest and this and that? And we quickly find out it is the biggest headaches, because it works nicely maybe in your backyard. It may still work for remote telescopes, but it will give us endless headaches for running it in a sense where people's expectations are very high. And I'll give you an example. If someone takes an image, and Charlie was talking about up to 50, I think it was about 50 gigabytes, we estimate that the average user now, with the advent of larger cameras, you're getting 25 megapixel cameras are typical now. We used to have 60 megapixels. Now come the CMOS 25, we're going to go up. You can only do that if you give instant satisfaction to the user. And that means that your data cannot stay a whole night. It has to be there within 10 minutes. And that means that you have to have very high internet speed and high reliability. The outages have to be extremely low. So the requirements are very high. And that's, for example, very tough on places like Chile, because they're remote. It's very interesting to look at the infrastructure of Chile, and Max can tell you that too. The way they built up the solar panels, the way they built up the infrastructure, and what they are learning through their mistakes, because of the incredible temperature variations that you have. In winter, they've had incredible snow. They were completely snowed under. The solar, you can forget solar in winter. So you need big backups from battery banks and so on. But then you also need high-speed internet, and they often only have 4G, and 4G is absolutely very limiting when you have impatient users, right? So maybe Max, Charlie, maybe others have the patience, but the normal user doesn't have the patience, and then we have to deal with the complaints plus keeping the costs down. So that gives you a bit of a taste of what we're doing there. And of course, the reliability, the assets that you have typically in a large observatory like that, the roof, the design of the roof has to be super reliable, and it has to be completely independent of any soft switch. So we have a special type of industrial design there, that even when our computers break down and all the power breaks down, it will all automatically close no matter what. And yeah, you're talking about 1 million plus values there. So that's a big thing. So we cannot afford any water coming in whatsoever. Another thing you'll realize, we don't have any domes, and people always, we get the inquiries, hey, we got this fantastic dome on La Palma or so, and it's beautiful. And then we say, well, that's not going to work. And they say, well, my dome is 100% reliable. Well, unfortunately, it turns out to be that you cannot downscale what the professional observatories have in form of a dome, because they are, again, not slewing the telescopes very much. If you slew 20 minutes, the dome is in slave mode and is always following the telescope, and it will break down. Like Max already said, we don't use rotators. That's a good thing, and so on. We use filter offsets to minimize the time between focusing and so on. We have temperature curves. We have all kinds of intelligence there to optimize the usage and also to minimize the pain that is there for the user. And that's why domes are absolutely not reliable, they will break down, and they take a long time to slew. It takes an average 30 seconds to 2 minutes for a dome to follow in slave mode for a telescope, and that is lost time for the user, and it's very frustrating, right? Another question is, why don't we use Alt-Az? You have bigger mounts that have field rotators. We've done that too. There's a plane wave 27-inch, for example, that has a field rotator. It works, again, very nice on a remote observatory, but you cannot run these type of telescopes in a commercial or should I say a not-for-profit organization as we have, because when you point such a telescope at the zenith, the rotation time is almost infinite in order to follow an object, and it gets very frustrating. And and these things just go too slow. Okay, next slide, please. Yes, that's a quick look at the control panel. So again, Max is going to talk a bit about the control side and so on. What we try and do it, and hopefully, well, we're not completely successful with it, we know, but we work. iTelescope is essentially a software company, even though it looks like hardware. It's essentially a software company where you have to know a lot about software, because you have to write so much code yourself in order to make things work. I mean, you've probably heard of Nina. It's a great tool, absolutely. Voyager, Sequence Generator Pro, and so on. They work very nicely, but they are not suitable for the armchair user that wants to use a telescope anywhere. And that it's just like getting into the car. Nobody worries about the engine. But if you use Nina and so on, you have to know something about the engine structure in order to operate it correctly, right? So you have to be a bit of a geek in order to operate it. And what we're trying to do more and more is get away from the traditional view where the user was always in the driver's seat. That was how we started iTelescope. And now when you look at the apps, you look at the Sky Safari Pro and others that have become completely sort of ubiquitous and independent of the user's knowledge, we are rewriting all our software so that the user can have complete control over the telescope, because we want to give the complete responsibility and feeling of control of the telescope, and at the same time use more and more AI in order to gear to look at the images, to go through images, to find out which images are not suitable or should have to be retaken, make it easy for the choice, and so on. And that takes a lot of software knowledge, and that's why we're getting more and more young people on board to help us with that. And you can see all the different, so this was taken, by the way, this morning. You can see they're sighting Spring. You can see Sierra Remote Observatory, which is open right now. There's Deep Sky Chile, and that's what Max is going to talk a bit about. Then we have the other site, also thanks to Max. There are two sites in Spain. One is near Sevilla, and the other one is, is a bit closer to Madrid. Next slide, please. Yes, and then of course the final thing in any observation, you want to do planning. So we have tried to keep it simple that that a user can find a certain object, enter it, enter the coordinates are entered automatically. The filters, we will help more and more to fill out filters completely by themselves. Charlie was mentioning the use of the planner, which is very important, and we will integrate more and more of that into our software in real time to help the user make informed decisions. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the planning tool where you can plan your and reserve your observations up to 3 months ahead. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's the final slide. This is really interesting. I mean, obviously all images know about this, and this is what intrigues me no end. And it's also why, the backyard astronomer can never be substituted, and that's not what we're saying at iTelescope. We understand that people love their own telescope and they should have their own telescope. At the same time, like Charlie says, we're trying to offer them a different experience. So I think both is necessary. And what is really remarkable is how good the color cameras are getting. That's really fantastic news for remote astronomy, because it's very difficult for many to understand the meaning of filters, the meaning of binning, and so on. But what we're seeing now with the new advent of the seamless cameras, and this is an example of one of our RASA telescopes, right? Very fast telescope, you can get incredibly deep images. This was just done last week. Of course, that's quite a long exposure, but you know, you can easily take the Eagle Nebula or any of these bright objects in half an hour, and you can go extremely deep. And that's what I find so exciting, that you can get rid of a lot of filters, and we can make things easier in future for the user. Thank you. That's it so far.
Great. Thanks very much, Christian. So let me pick up with the final section of our that we're covering, which is actually an example of a telescope we've just set up at Deep Sky Chile. And I'll take you through very quickly the kind of key stages and the key considerations that have made it possible. And Charlie, if you could kindly move to the next slide, we can see there a beautiful site that I was so relieved after about 3 months' work to see the telescope actually in Chile, actually under the sky with the roof open. And this was about a week ago, a couple of weeks ago. And it's actually operating right now as I speak. It's a Takahashi TOA 130, a 130 millimeter aperture refractor, very nice telescope. And we were operating it actually in Spain at EI, Christian mentioned just now, for a couple of years, and really got the design of our system down quite refined. You can see on the back there a ZWO 6200 monochrome with a filter wheel, 2-inch filters. That's an amazing 60 megapixel ZWO, top of the range at the moment. They do a color version as well, but we've got the monochrome one, and it produces these 8,000 by even maybe 9,000 by 6,000 pixel images, full frame sensor, beautiful piece of equipment. We have an Atlas, an FLI Atlas focuser in the middle there. That's a beautiful, reliable focuser, and focusers I'll talk about, really important. And then the whole thing is sitting on a 10 micron a GM 1000 HPS mount, the smallest of the 10 micron, and boy, are those mounts fantastic, just completely rock solid, Italian manufacturer, really recommended. Anyway, in order to be in such a circumstance, it's fantastic to be at Deep Sky Chile. And Deep Sky Chile, if we move to the next slide, please, Charlie, is, as I've said there, just astronomer. When you die, this is where you wake up in heaven. I think it's an amazing site, right in the middle of nowhere. A really rough 20 or 30 kilometer road going up into the foothills of the Andes, certain elevation. Can you remember, Christian? I think it's at about 1,500 meters, 1,800 meters, something like that. And you can see here, holding a beer at the end of a very long day when we built the system, you can see Frank Jobard, one of the co-founders of Deep Sky Chile, and he's really constructed this incredible thing in the middle of the desert. There are now, I think, 4 of these large sheds with roll-off roofs and solar panels and everything, and inside each one is a dozen or so piers, and you can rent time on these scopes. Actually, what you're seeing there is the telescope that's now T70 on iTelescope, but it's the one that Charlie and I used for our project to photograph the entire night sky. It's actually uses a DSLR lens. We used a 35 millimeter Samyang Rokinon to photograph 153 panels covering the entire night sky. And we had to have one here in Chile and one in Spain to do that. That's the subject of the talk on this channel that Charlie mentioned a few weeks ago. And at the bottom, you can see how we get to the observatory in Frank's pickup. And you have to be incredibly careful as you're driving along the road to look out for what you can see in the next picture, which are these completely lethal 6-inch spikes that are cast off by the cactuses on either side of the road. And these will go through your tires of your pickup without any problem at all. And during the day, when you're going up all fresh and having had a sleep, it's no problem. You can see them, you can stop, you can move them out of the way. But when you're coming back at 2:30 in the morning or later, having struggled with polar alignment and you're exhausted and tired, these things are appalling because you have to kind of creep along and look in the headlights. And
Max, did you
Has
say
Frank said how many times he's hit them?
Well, enough. Yeah, he's gone through several tires there. So yeah, apparently he's got really good at it now. He's got a kind of telepathic sense. He knows when one's there. So.
Can you say you can move them out of the way? Can you?
Yes, these are just like thrown off. I think maybe there's a seed at the bottom of these spikes, and cactuses shed them.
Wow.
Very antisocial behavior. Yeah. Of course, you don't want to these either. Right, now, in the next slide, you will see the telescope when it was actually here, right here in my room a month ago, when I went through the process of getting everything ready to send to Chile. And I got it back from Spain. I needed to give it a very thorough clean because it had been working away for 2 years. All the equipment had got dust in all the crevices. So I gave it a really good clean. And then I went through the process systematically of replacing all the cables because you don't want a cable to go when you're out there. So I got brand new cables, and the way to paradise is to number your cables very carefully so that you know exactly where they go. You've got all the right ones, and when it gets to Chile, Frank Jobard can set it up as quickly and efficiently as possible. So on the left, we've got the naked telescope, and you can see all the components I mentioned. And on the right, you can see I'm in the process of getting all the cabling right. And on the next slide, you can see my method, which is to painstakingly put on labels so that when Frank is setting the equipment up in Chile, he knows exactly which one. And I'm sure this won't surprise many of you, but we quickly ran out of letters in the alphabet. So once we got to Z, we had to go and have 1, 2s, and 3s, and so on. So I think there's about 30 different cables involved in the setup. Really, really fairly complex.
Hey, Max, real quick, we have a couple of quick questions in regards to Deep Sky Chile. How do you have power being so remote? How are telescopes powered?
Yeah, well, solar panels is the short answer, combined with big battery banks. And every time Frank and Cedric, his partner, build a new observatory, it's necessary to put a new solar array in so that you're increasing your power production. And there's some hope, I think, that they may be able to get a data line to be run there. I should have mentioned, actually, if you can, Charlie, whiz back to the slide of Deep Sky Chile and just look above the vehicle on that skyline. You might just be able to see a white pixel, and just about where the cursor is at the moment. And that is the Vera Rubin Observatory under construction by the National Science Foundation and European Space Agency. That is going to be an unbelievable facility in a couple of years' time. It's called the Large Synoptic Survey, and it's going to be an incredible telescope. It cost, I think I'm right in saying, over $1 billion. It's an enormous project, and it's going to produce a tsunami of data every day. We're complaining about maybe 15 gigabytes. the Vera Rubin, you're talking terabytes a day coming from that
Wow.
thing. Just
Wow.
and
And speaking of data, what are your average speeds there, and what is the internet connection that's being used?
Yeah, the internet connection is 4G. Yeah.
Okay, so it's 4G.
But every system there gets its own 4G SIM and its own 4G modem, so you're not sharing that bandwidth with other users. And my experience is that it's superb. I'm getting comfortably 50 megabits per second down, which is great for control, and pretty reliably 10 to 20 megabits per second up. And the technique we use is to upload our images immediately you take them. We've got a powerful enough PC there that it can be running all the software, which I'll show you in just a second. But when you take an image, let's say you've got 180-second exposure, that 3 minutes is long enough to upload the picture you've just taken to the cloud. And so at the end of the night, you've uploaded your 10 gigabytes of data, and you wake up in the morning here in the UK, and there in the cloud, ready to come down in literally a few minutes, is all your night's imaging. So that's a beautiful system.
Wow,
so we
awesome.
found the data access there to be just fantastic.
Wonderful.
That's
awesome.
Let's whiz forward to the most perilous part of the whole enterprise, which is shipping. Oh my God.
Oh my.
You just have to pray.
Yeah.
But let me give a call out to DHL, who did a superb job in delivering everything safely to Chile. The one thing they couldn't stop is the appalling news that you can see if you look carefully at the right-hand image, which is the customs bill for importing the telescope into Chile. And you really, really need to be aware of this if you're going to send your telescope overseas. The cost of the import duty for the equipment going into Chile is like almost 10 times as much as the cost for physically sending it. So I was very grateful to form a consortium to share that cost between people. Essentially I put in the equipment, and my fellow consortium members contributed to the shipping and import costs, and of course the hosting at Deep Sky Chile, which is an ongoing cost. Anyway, the telescope arrived. Hurrah! It took about a week, which is quick actually in the world of shipping expensive gear around the world. And in the next image, Charlie, please, you can see the telescope installed on the left. It's the telescope in the foreground. That's our system. And on the right, you can see Frank in the final stages of balancing everything with the 10 micron. The 10 micron has if you're not familiar with it, has a brilliant button on this hand controller, which is balance my mount. And it will go off and do a robotic dance and actually, move left and right, jiggle around, and come back and say, you are 0.001% off. Move your counterweight by a millimeter. And Frank very kindly does all that. But I know Christian will endorse me here. The importance of having somebody skilled and knowledgeable on the scene to troubleshoot, sort out problems is just incredibly important.
It's everything.
Christian, it's
everything.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Sorry, but they've been absolutely great. I just quickly want to say that because due to the time difference, of course, we're for example very lucky with the shift in Chile at the moment. It is local 1 a.m. or something like that, right? And they're often there. They're there, and lousy hours, right? Really, and it's true.
And we have one more question that popped through. My buddy DB is curious about what factors are used for the mount choice. He's saying he would think a well-made fork or L mount would certainly be more reliable by eliminating the meridian flip and tightening up the cabling.
Well, of course, quite a few GMs have through the mount cabling, the paramounts particularly, but I haven't found meridian flips to be particularly an issue. You need to be really careful to set your system up so you don't have peer collisions. But Christian has so much more experience in this, so you should comment, Christian.
Yeah, I mean, meridian flips are a big deal. I don't, if anybody says they've never had a meridian flip, I don't believe, a meridian crash, sorry, a crash, a peer crash. I mean, peer crashes are a nightmare. And it's true that if you do your cabling very well, but all mounts will err sooner or later, and you will have a peer crash, right? And I think the big thing you can really do is, it's true that oh gosh, I don't even know where to start, but let me make this very short. So it's great to have mounts that don't that don't require meridian. There's a downside. For example, the new L mounts take a lot of tuning. So whatever you do, it's like, well, this time you buy a Tesla or whatever, and then every time you change something, you need more tuning. They're great, the L mounts, but don't ever change something when it works. So there is no peer, or there's no mount that is absolutely perfect. There's always something, and in the end, all you can do is minimize the problems that you have, but you are going to have problems. Okay.
Well, something that helps is to have a very high peer, and if you look on the image there, you can see in the observatory that all of the scopes are on really high piers, and that does eliminate them. I think I'm right, Charlie. We've done imaging up at 85 degrees.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And touch wood, so far we've not had a peer collision. So again, that's partly the expert setting up of the cabling and so on by Frank to make sure you don't get snags and so on. But we have a very long telescope. The TOA 130 is it's over 1 meter in length. And in fact, if we go to the next slide, we can see a really important piece of equipment here on the right, which is the Gemini snap cap. There's several different manufacturers that make these. We found this one to be particularly reliable, really excellent. And it does two things. First of all, you can remotely, that's a stepper motor, the black thing on the right. And it actually physically opens the end of the telescope. And so you can close it during the day and stop dust going in, because getting dirty over a period of time is obviously an issue when you're out for all the time. Fine dust depositing. You do have to clean about every 6 months or so with distilled water, and again, the folks at Deep Sky Chile are very good at doing that. But the other thing the snap cap offers is, and you can see it in this picture, is flat illumination. It's got an electroluminescent panel built in. You can control the brightness, and you can, Nina, for example, a superb flat wizard that will adjust the brightness and or adjust the exposure to match your brightness, and let you do both narrowband flats and broadband flats really, really quickly. So that's very handy, better than sky flats, really much more consistent. On the left, the bottom left, I'll just quickly mention something that's super important, as I'm sure most of you know, and that's building a good pointing model, which first of all makes sure that when you specify a target, the telescope goes exactly to that position. But more importantly, it helps with tracking. And the 10 micron has a very good pointing model system built into it, with up to 100 data points. And this nice software from a Swiss manufacturer, astromi.ch, it's called Model Creator, works very well with the 10 micron, but will also work with other mounts. And that's an automated model building system that you need to run roughly about once a month. People sometimes say that your model is a bit like a fresh fish. It's great for a day or two in the fridge, but after a week or a month, it's time to build. So I don't know quite why it drifts, but it definitely does. On the next screen, we can see the view that you have with your remote access to the PC driving the system. We use Nina, just superb piece of remote operation with Nina. It handles everything, framing, sequence, focusing. see going on here. Nice aberration inspector on the right here so that you can check your stars are nice and pinpoint in all corners. Works well with PhD guiding. We tend not to use guiding on the 10 micron, but actually there's one really important reason why even with perfect tracking on the 10 micron you do need to guide. And Charlie, maybe you should explain that.
Yeah, and so it's funny, Max, because literally this evening I got this to work without guiding, but it's dithering, right? So in order to, first of all, I'll say the 10 micron mount, I'm not used to this. I have a CEM60 in the backyard. I love it. You know, guided, I get less than half an arc second tracking. It's fantastic. The 10 micron performs that well or better with no guiding. It's, you know, when Max builds a good model, it's absolutely insane how good it is. But that means that there's actually no way to dither between exposures. So I literally just discovered this today, and it's implemented for the first time on our remote system running tonight. Nina has a feature called Direct Guide, whose only purpose is to serve as a fake software guider that can allow you to not actually do any guiding, but to do the dither between exposures. And dithering is actually pretty important because for modern CMOS cameras, most of the only, you know, the read noise is incredibly low. Most of the remaining noise is not corrected by flats, is sort of this this pixel non-uniformity that you get. And so what you want to do is have all of your images slightly offset from each other, just a few pixels, so that when you register them and bring them together, any non-uniformity across the sensor is washed out because you're aligning on the stars, and that means the pixels are now unaligned. So until recently, for our scope, we've been using guiding with the 10 micron, even though the 10 micron totally didn't need it, just in order to have the dithering. But literally tonight we've got it running with the Nina Direct Guider, and it appears to be dithering just fine, no guiding. Well, it's fake guiding. It tricks the software into guiding, thinking it's being guided. But yeah, that 10 micron mount is absolutely amazing.
Well, that's great news, Charlie. Thank you so much. And we haven't even got our polar aligning dialed 100% in. I think it's about 3 arc minutes off at the moment, isn't it? Two to three. So I know we're going to have a session with Frank shortly to get the polar alignment error down really low, and we may even get improvement of performance. One final thing I'll mention, which is in the next slide, is the focusing, and that's so critical. You know, just absolutely important to get that beautifully dialed in. And Nina does a great job, but it can be actually quite tricky if you've got this is a problem we had particularly with the Samyang lenses, the Rokinon Samyang lenses that we were using, are using still. You've got to be able to go past focus and back again. And with these lenses, you have a hard stop at infinity. So we had to modify our remote systems by actually removing the back of the lens and machining it and reassembling everything so that you can, in fact, move the best focus position just slightly on the north here, the top side of infinity, to give you that room to go through critical focus and build that focus curve. So that's something to bear in mind, because if it's many thousand miles away, it's not so easy to rush out into the backyard to modify it. And so, in conclusion, let's have a look at the next image, which is the beautiful Milky Way arcing overhead. This is an all-sky camera that I've set up below the telescope, which both shows the state of the night sky. Excuse me for a second. And I can see any clouds that are rolling in. But also, it shows me the position of the telescope. And that's very useful to be able to keep an eye on that through the night. On the very final image, I can show you one of our first very promising test images of the tarantula in just hydrogen and oxygen. And it's just so exciting to have the prospect of using this telescope for the next 2 years to do what we did in the north and systematically go through all those incredible objects and build up the pictures. So that's a very quick overview of what it's taken us to set up remote telescopes, and in particular the new one we've got in Chile. It's been just a delight to work with Charlie and Christian, getting all the systems together. And if you've got any questions, we're here to answer.
Yeah, Charlie, I have a quick question. When it comes to the dark skies and doing remote imaging, especially for people who are new or getting interested into doing more remote imaging in dark skies, when it comes to doing LRGB and narrowband imaging, and you have only these subscriptions that are maybe purchasing for like say $20, $30, and you're only getting so many hours or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is how much time, or how do you calculate, can you do a lot or get a full night's worth of images to, within that amount of time being in that dark sky? Can you get, if you have maybe accumulated only 4 hours worth of subscription time, is it really, do you need to spend a little bit more time and be a little bit more patient to gather up maybe a bit more time so you can go ahead and do that? Or do you think, you can actually, with these dark skies, you can get a decent image out of, maybe a couple hours or 3 hours or so?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a couple of things going on. So number one, you're absolutely right. Having really dark skies just makes everything better. With a much shorter amount of time, you will get a much better image. And I will say, the images that you take under really dark skies are just a joy to process as well. Like when you go to process them later, it's like you're not dealing with all this extra noise and you're not trying to remove these extra gradients. And so, yes, the dark skies are one thing. The other thing I'll say is that a lot of these, and we don't have to get into like étendue and everything, but a lot of these are very high throughput systems, right? So you're looking at huge aperture that you can bin in some cases 3x3 and still have good resolution. That improves your signal to noise ratio massively. Or some of the other telescopes, like you saw, I showed the picture of the Takahashi Epsilon. That thing's, not huge aperture, but it's shooting at f3, right? Yeah. So the Rasa that the Christian showed, f2. I mean, you are just, gobbling up photons into every photo site. So yes, a couple of the images in the visible universe were 10 exposures in each channel. 10 90-second, 10 180-second exposures, R, G, and B. There were a few images of objects that made the book that were like that. Yeah, Max.
Well, worth mentioning, in the back of the visible universe, we do have the comprehensive metadata, don't we? Maybe you should just mention that.
Yeah. So we captured the exact details: what telescope, what the image scale was, what exposures, what filters, everything for every single image of the like 200 images in that book, and put them in the appendix. So you can see that. I think the running chicken was one of the ones that was. I was shocked. It was literally like less than 10 exposures per channel. And I told Max, like, you're probably going to have to go shoot another night of this or whatever. It was like, an hour and a half worth of data or something. And I processed it and I was like, nope, that's all we need. We're good. Like, we're done.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we should mention, sorry, Dan, just mention that that's an example of one of the images we took using the iTelescope system. I think about maybe 30% of the images in the book are from iTelescope, and obviously our time on those systems was constrained partly because you can't book more than a few hours, but also it's very expensive. So we had to use that time really well. And to Charlie's point, if you can get the exposure right and you've got a fast system, you can do a lot in a short period of time.
I think the bottom line I'll say is that you can't benchmark off what you're used to doing in your backyard for these systems under these skies. It's just very different.
Yeah, it's definitely, you're not comparing apples to apples when you're dealing, especially when you're dealing Bortle 8+9 compared to Bortle 1 skies. In some cases,
Bortle 5, even Bortle 5 or 6 where I'm at, you can't compare it to a Bortle 1.
and I think one of the things that I know Pete, you weren't with us at the time, but Eric, you were. When we did the Southern Sky Challenge with the Tarantula Nebula, we were all baffled. We gathered up money from the membership and we all put it towards data, and we ended up with about 4 hours per channel. So for HSO, each channel, and on the Tarantula Nebula, and realized that we only needed like a half an hour of each channel to get something really, really good. And that we had 12 hours of data was incredible. And it was just like amazing what you could get with just a
That's
third
amazing.
of that.
So basically, we did overkill. We did extreme
We
overkill
overkilled
on
it. Yeah. We could have gotten 17 Southern Sky challenges out of that. But we did not know. We did not know any better. We were very, very ignorant of the data capability of gathering of those photons, and we just let's do 12 hours. We'll be fine.
And it's going to vary, obviously, by scope, by target. Tarantula is, to be fair, a very bright object. If sometimes when you're imaging these small galaxies, right, like you may end up committing, but it is nothing like imaging from your backyard, though. Like everything is faster. It's just a question of how much faster.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's a lot of conversation in the beginning of it was regarding the light pollution issues. And I know Sean Nielsen is in the chat. He's been a light pollution, an advocate against light pollution in his area for 10 plus years.
He's made changes in his town, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. And unfortunately, to the same thing, it's a tough battle. It is a really tough battle when you're dealing with corporations and legislators and all this stuff going on politically. It's an uphill battle, unfortunately, but it's a battle that I think everybody that's not only here but in your own astronomy clubs back at home need to get involved with and continue the fight, because it's super important.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to say it's not only us astronomers, I think, who suffer from it, but it's also people who grow up in cities and never see the night sky. Everybody watching this video pretty much is going to have had the experience of being out under the Milky Way. But I had a friend who I just picked up at the station this evening, and we stopped as we drove onto my island at a very dark car park and just got out and looked up. And he had never seen the Milky Way. And, he was just gasping with delight. And it's such a sad thing that this great experience has been lost for so many people, especially children. Yeah, oh, you're muted, Christian. I think you're muted.
Is that me? Or?
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to add, talking about wildlife, because that's always at my heart. Nocturnal wildlife has been greatly affected. We once did a show on that. I mean, of course, bats you can think of, and many other animals have completely changed. And I think that's the thing, astronomers shouldn't argue isolated. They are, you have to argue on a more global front, and take especially also wildlife into consideration, because many people are more prone to listen to that.
That's true.
Kind of on this subject, could I just ask our audience how they're experiencing the Starlink satellites at the moment? Because my impression is that they've got a bit better. I don't know whether that's true or not.
They've gotten a little bit better, at least I would say over the past 6 months or so. Things have gotten slightly better. I do remember last year, I believe, just seeing that stream of satellites. It was almost like a train, of satellites, and it was kind of hard to explain, to some of my friends and even my wife and kids when they see those out in the sky. It's like, what is that? What is going on there? And then all of a sudden you say, "Oh, that's Elon Musk's stuff." That's Starlink. but at least for right now, I can only speak for myself. It hasn't been as bad.
Yeah.
You know, at least for my backyard imaging experience, it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be.
They painted the black, I think. They
put some anti-reflection coatings.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah, I think they did make some modifications to improve that. So yeah.
Let's just hope that like all the other companies that are looking to follow, right? So there are 2 to 3 other companies also looking to put 20 to 40,000 of them up there. You know, I'm glad the community was able to get Starlink to put the black paint on. Because you're right, it's not terrible actually. They were pretty irritating at first, and now with the black paint, it's an improvement. So if we're gonna have 100,000 of these things up there, you know, let's hope that the other companies follow suit with this and make them as unobtrusive as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just that, you know, with the light pollution, it's not only is it affecting, you know, Christian, like you're saying, our nocturnal life, you know, our nocturnal wildlife, it's also affecting human beings, our own lives, you know, our own, you know, health, you know, but a lot of people don't realize that, you know, the impact of what light pollution can do just for our own, you know, health. So it's a struggle, and it's something that, you know, everybody who's really interested and want to fight that good fight, you know, we have to continue doing that.
Just to the point, because I come a lot from the lighting background or from the optics background. I mean, with the advent, of course, of the very efficient LEDs, you don't have the possibilities to use the high pressure sodium filters that we had before, where you could filter that out. You know, light pollution filters are getting useless when you have a broad, efficient spectrum like that. There's nothing to filter, right? So that's another problem. And then they put these stupid LEDs to the sky. You know, a lot of these things can just go down.
They can go right down.
Turning the lamps, just turn them on 180 degrees. There's no reason why you need to shine up, right? And it's irritating.
That's what DSA is, Dark Sky Alliance is always trying to say, is like full cutoff designs. If they could just get them at the manufacturer level, you know, because people, you're never going to convince the person who purchases these things. It has to be the people who manufacture.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. You know,
but you know something? Let's also look at your neighbor. I mean, we're talking about the cities, but look at your neighbors. I mean, you politely say, hey, what about your lights? I mean, can you do something? But you know, if you got good neighbors to work with, that's great. If you don't, what do you do then at that point?
I'm lucky, for example, I control, because I'm an electrical engineer, I found the main circuit breaker for our whole street. So I just switched the main breaker.
Nice, just shut them down. Shut them down.
That's the city power outage.
You know, I went to them and they've all been very supportive, actually, because they like what I'm doing. So I just shut the whole street down.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
I do like, if anybody's been to Sedona, Arizona, right? It's, for a town of its size, has far, far less light pollution, and that's by ordinance, right? They know that it attracts people. You know, if you go to Sedona, you're going to be able to see the Milky Way. It's going to be dark, and people come there for that reason. And then it becomes a virtuous cycle of like, oh, we don't want to mess that up. People come here for that. You know, that's these dark sky parks in the U.S. Like, there's a couple new ones every year. I mean, overall, the trend is definitely not good. Like, LED lighting has become so cheap. The trend, but there are places at least that are trying to protect it.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of countries out there as well, and I know that you guys can speak to it a lot better, that they consider their night sky a natural resource, and it's protected as such. And it's amazing. Like Australia, I believe, is one of them. New Zealand is another. There are a couple.
Chile. In fact, as you drive on the highways in Chile, and you enter the area where there are a lot of observatories, you see road signs saying, you know, welcome to the Valley of the Stars or whatever. And there's a good attitude there. Yeah. In fact, I think astronomy is one of Chile's, you know, it's quite high up in Chile's national, you know, import-export trade Because they have these huge observatories run by international foundations. It's a big boost to their economy.
That's unbelievable. It's amazing what some countries do to protect their night skies, and what some other countries do very little. And
I mean, yeah,
I'll just put it like that.
Yeah, but even to your point there, Dan, I mean, you look at one of the reasons why I'm always trying to convince my wife Robin, we gotta retire to New Mexico. It's because the state of New Mexico, a lot of the cities in there, they have ordinances, and they consider the night sky a tourism attraction. They consider it a natural resource.
Yeah.
Same thing I think in up there about Arizona. Especially like Flagstaff around the Grand Canyon and so on. So yeah, I mean, if more communities and more people would take the time to do a little bit more outreach to others, as well as to the manufacturers of the LEDs and the light manufacturers, who knows? I mean, it's already, but it's going to be a struggle, because as you said, legislation and all other things, and and some even to certain people, just simple unawareness or ignorance because they don't understand, because they're just putting up lights around their house, for security or what have you. But if you do, the manufacturers sell lights and lamps that point more downward, towards where we really need them. Who knows? So we'll see.
I think somebody put in the chat, why do we have street lights for cars with headlights? I mean,
yeah,
it's incredible.
Exactly.
But it's definitely a thing that's been going on. I know I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago regarding light pollution, and John Nielsen popped on, a couple other people, and it's just a real important part of not only what we do as astronomers, but like Dr. Sasse and everybody else has said, it's about honestly mental health of not only us but of the wildlife as well. So
absolutely. Now, speaking mentioning Dr. Sasse and iTelescope, I was also looking at iTelescope and a lot of the subscription levels. And even when I was mentioning Charlie with just the imaging time, is the most popular for most average backyard astro imagers who are getting into or getting interested into remote imaging. I see that there's a I believe it's a $20 or $30 subscription and maybe a $40 subscription. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And you can do even a lot more than just that. Can you explain a little bit more on that? Because I also see, there's also seminars and things you can do.
Just briefly. So what we have done now is, especially just talking about light pollution and so on, we talk about the light pollution of the moon. So we have a happy moon. We have a happy hour moon. So when the moon illumination gets over 70%, as Charlie already said correctly, which is a multiple, actually it's not proportional at all, it really brightens up. You have the possibility on a plan actually to rent any telescope for free for half an hour with a certain interval, so that we have time for everyone. But you can do narrowband imaging during that. If you take Charlie's plan and you look a bit at the, where the moon is and so on, you can actually work out quite well. And I've seen some amazing images. So before that, during full moon, the telescopes would just idle. And one day we said, that's silly, let's just give them out for free, and since then our popularity has gone up quite a lot.
That's awesome.
Charlie, this is a question to you, and I'd like for you to kind of present it to the group here, is talk to us about the books. Why did you write the books? And, looking at basically like the Sky Atlas and why. I mean, I'm such a proponent to always say, look, if you're getting into this hobby, this is the book that you have to get. I mean, bar none, the Sky Atlas is truly a manual that everybody who is in our viewer membership should get. And what you would do, I know that, but I'll let you discuss that. Go right ahead if you don't mind.
Yeah. So so for the atlas in particular, it's really interesting. If you look at most, typical sky atlases, you will see thousands. Like, I have a copy of Interstellarum sitting here, and that's an amazing atlas that maps everything, right? And you just see thousands of objects up there. And then you kind of point your telescope around, you take pictures of them, and you're like, that's not that interesting. And it's like, there's just so many open clusters, right? Like, it's just, millions of open clusters. And then what you don't see marked in most atlases are, for instance, the Sharpless catalog objects, right? So this is all the, the H2 emission objects in the Northern Hemisphere. Most of them aren't even marked in there. And Sharpless 132 in particular, I put on the cover years ago, and I wrote it because it was one that literally was not in most of the atlas. And I was like, it is an absolutely stunningly beautiful narrowband target. But those atlases were designed based on catalogs that were mostly created during the visual era, and they were mostly for things that were seen visually, and then you could point, a visual observer to go look at through the eyepiece. Well, you're never going to see most of the Sharpless objects, right? They're faint emission nebulae, but they look amazing in an image. And so, that's kind of the gap, is there's a lot more out there than your basic atlas is ever going to show you. And so I went to try to sort of catalog all those. My current project is actually sort of the next version of that. I'm trying to go way beyond that with sort of a deep sky encyclopedia to go through. And one of the questions Max and I get all the time, and it was relative to the visible universe, we put a couple of examples in there, is which narrowband channels are brightest, right? Like which ones should I, take more? How much exposure time should I take? Should I even bother to take oxygen, for instance, on this one, or is it only going to be hydrogen? There are some basic consistent patterns to that, but it's great to have it by object as well. So that's kind of the next step, is helping people who've now discovered these incredibly faint objects that didn't appear in their atlas understand better how to image them.
Let me see. Let's see what's in the chat here. More light pollution conversation. My buddy Dave said, I find it funny we're talking about light pollution during the Christmas season, where lights are everywhere and everywhere. But yeah,
very true.
Yep. But again, it's more of just a battle. We just got to continue to do it, and just hopefully we get all successful at the end. Hopefully it won't be looking at that nice little line that goes through the middle of the United States, start going west and west and west.
It's now 3:45 for me here in the morning, and
wow.
My sleeping apparatus is tempting me away.
So much for being sensitive to your time and hours.
Can I thank you very, very much indeed for the opportunity to talk. It's been great to share the evening with you, and I wish you everybody a really happy Thanksgiving.
You as well, Max. Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate the time and the lateness that you've been staying up for. Thank you so much.
Good. Very good. See you, everybody.
Thanks.
Sweet dreams, Max.
And I know we're almost time
almost
here,
that
really
time.
Quick. But Charlie, while I have you here, I wanted to say personally,
Sure.
Thank you so much for that planner that you set up for me. And I would like for you to share that, the information with our viewer membership of how to get that personalized planner for their longitude and latitude, and where would they need to go, and what the process would be.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I'm at my website is digitalstars.wordpress.com. And you can also just email me at deepskyprimer@gmail. So deepskyprimer@gmail. For $20, I'll create a PDF that's basically it's the astrophotography planner, but it's customized for your latitude and longitude, showing moon data and everything for the next few years. I'm also working on a version of that for all the iTelescope locations. So for those who use iTelescope, I'm looking to create a custom version that basically maps out the You can look at the year and it plots how many imaging hours you can get for all the iTelescope locations. So that's coming
awesome.
in the next couple of
That'd
weeks.
be awesome too. That'd be awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
It's
Thank you.
fantastic. Yeah.
And I put your email in the chat, and if anybody wants it, they
Thank you.
they
Thank you.
can throw it in
Yeah.
there. But we do have a spin. We have a free giveaway we're doing tonight. We need to do that as well. And we got to remember the picture of the week started voting last night. There's 4 images up there. Go check it out and vote for your favorite pick, because this is going to be the last one of the year. It's going to be the last one of the year. So pick the last one of the year, and I'll show it real quick what's up there. And let me just grab it real quick on the live site, and I could just show you real quick what's going on. So if you want to vote for your pictures of the week, wrong one. There we go. If you want to see it, go to astroweb.com, go to the image contests, and it disappeared on me. Sorry about that. We'll do that. And you could go right down to the bottom. So here's the first picture, Polaris, with all the IFN and everything. Pretty cool picture there. M42 by Mark Ellis. IC 4628 by Herbert Walter. And Starless Dark Shark by, who is this? This is by William Whitveen. I'll mess that up, but Whitveen. So go vote. There's only 4 votes right now. It just opened up, so get your votes in. It's the last one of the year, and don't forget the picture of the month nominee right here. You got the bat and the squid. You got the Guardians of Navi, where that goes to Cassiopeia. The Pac-Man. So that's for the month of October. So there's only one more left. So definitely go check that out as far as picture of the week, picture of the month. And don't forget Astropalooza coming up very, very soon on December 10th. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be out of control.
You get to see Christian and I again for that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, you get that, and you know what, for those of you out there that are still out there that want to laugh, Christian called me up or threw me a text message saying, Dan, I'm gonna be on 3 times in 5 weeks. Can we cancel just one of them, because it's a little much. so that's Christian, thank you so much. And everybody, Charles, thank you so much for coming on. I know it's a lot.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun. Let me see if I can get the little wheel up. And you guys have seen this before. I wish Max stuck around to see this, but we'll do the wheel. And here we go. So this is the IP for AP yearly subscription for IP for AP, 1-year subscription. We have for this wheel, we have 102 entries now.
Look at the slices of the pie on that.
Oh, it's getting ridiculous.
Oh,
That's insane.
So here we go. You ready to go?
Yep, do it.
There we go. No whammies. Let me get my camera out, because I've learned to take pictures of this so I don't forget. Greg Thornton. All right, Greg. Congratulations to Greg. And I will be sending you an email, and you'll be getting an email from Pete Proul, who runs IP for AP with Warren Keller, and to get your voucher for your 1 free year at IP for AP. Great tool for not only PixInsight tutorials, but great tool for Photoshop as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Awesome.
All right.
All right. So it's almost that time, fellas. I think it's time to close up shop here. It's getting late in New York. It's not as late as it was for Max, but it's a little bit late for me and Charlie. The rest of you guys are still going to dinner. Actually, I don't know what's the time in Vancouver. What is the time there now?
It's almost 8. So
almost 8. Oh, you're getting ready for dinner.
that's right.
So you got 8. I think you're 8 or 9 too, right? Eric, 9?
No, I'm 10.
You're 1 hour behind. That's right, because daylight savings and all that. And Pete, you're a mess. Forget it. You're like
almost at 8 or something like that.
He's 3 hours behind. He's
7:54.
7:54. He rushes home from work to get here.
Well, no, but this was a great show, and I really appreciate Charlie, Dr. Sasse. I really appreciate you coming on, and Max and everybody. So it's been great. So really, and I can't wait for
thanks for having us.
Oh, it's awesome having you guys. There's so many people in the chat that said best show in a while. So
nice.
So thank you everybody for all the accolades. It's been a great. Even Mark Ellis said awesome show this evening. So and for Mark to say that means a lot. So
it means a lot. I'll tell you this real quick before we go, Christian. I can't wait for AstroPalooza. I hope you have a little something for AstroPixel processor set aside for us, because I can't wait to get some more information on APP, because I'm a big APP proponent. You know, I love Pix Insight, but I love APP. It's one of my favorites.
You know, it's easy to make things difficult, but it's very difficult to make things easy, and that's what I would spend time on.
Very good point.
And Eric, you got to get Charlie's new book to read the new revision as APP.
Yep.
Yes, I had it APP. It's become that popular. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, it has. It has. I've already started talking to the family as far as the stocking stuffer for me.
There you go. There you go. and I don't know if the people in the chat noticed, but just so you know, if you want this book that we were talking about before, you could win one, and it's autographed inside. So thank you, Charles, for this. You could win this at AstroPalooza on December 10th. You could win this book, and along with all the other giveaways.
It is a great coffee book that will garnish a lot of interest from friends and family. I mean, believe me, Charlie and Max, they and Christian, you know, it is such a great coffee book. It really is. Just the imaging and the data that goes along with the photos is just spectacular.
Available on Amazon, or you can email me and I'll get you a signed copy. So or you can win one at AstroPalooza on the 10th.
There you go. You got to sign up for it. You got to sign up. Go to the website, sign up for it. But
all right, we will see you. We'll see you at AstroPalooza in like 2 or 3 weeks here.
Yeah, December 10th. So it's 18 days from today. So
okay.
All right.
So,
thanks, guys. Have a great evening. Have a great Thanksgiving. Everything. Really appreciate it, Charlie.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Absolutely, everybody. Have a good night. Go check us out. Watch the rest of the show. Well, next week. But again, thank you, everybody. Remember, and as always, keep imaging, keep educating, and clear skies. And we'll see you on Friday night. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.